Welcome again to Earlswood Baptist Church House Group. This week, as we continue through Mark chapter 1, we'll look at Jesus the healer. Well, if I had £1 for every time we've discussed healing in house group, I'd be a very rich man. And of course, we always find that we're very aware of all our ailments, and it makes it an interesting and sometimes difficult conversation. But healing was very much central to Jesus' ministry, and it's always been part of the church. I always like the fact that if you go back to the old 1662 prayer book, there's wonderful service for healing somewhere tucked in the back. So our reading today is Mark chapter 1, verses 29 to 45. As soon as they left the synagogue, they went with James and John to the home of Simon and Andrew. Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they immediately told Jesus about her. So he went to her, took her hand and helped her up. The fever left her, and she began to wait on them. That evening after sunset, the people brought to Jesus all who were ill and demon-possessed. The whole town gathered at the door, and Jesus healed many who had various diseases. He also drove out many demons, but he would not let the demons speak because they knew who he was. Very early in the morning, when it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Simon and his companions went to look for him, and when they found him they exclaimed, "Everyone is looking for you." Jesus replied, "Let us go somewhere else, to the nearby villages, so that I can preach there also. That is why I have come." So he travelled throughout Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and driving out demons. A man with leprosy came to him and begged him on his knees, "If you're willing, you can make me clean." Jesus was indignant. He reached out his hand and touched the man. "I am willing," he said. "Be clean." Immediately the leprosy left him, and he was cleansed. Jesus sent him away at once with a strong warning. "See that you don't tell this to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest, and offer the sacrifices that Moses commanded for your cleansing, as a testimony to them." Instead he went out and began to talk freely, spreading the news. As a result, Jesus could no longer enter a town openly, but stayed outside in lonely places. Yet the people still came to him from everywhere. When we think about healing, perhaps the first thing we have to acknowledge is the fact that Jesus is, of course, Jesus, the Son of God. Jesus' healings are part of a message. The kingdom of God has arrived, and Jesus is letting people know that he is the Messiah, the Son of God. But in part, and it may only be in part, but it's a significant part, Jesus' ministry is also a model for ours. We're obviously not gods, but the message of the kingdom remains. The good news has arrived, and the signs and wonders are part of that message. And as I said, the church has always prayed for healing, even though failure is common, for many reasons, and we can go into the reasons of faith one way or another, but sometimes it just doesn't seem to work, and other times it does. But the church has always been consistent in praying for the healing of body, mind and spirit. I think the key thing here is that Jesus is a compassionate Messiah. Matthew 14:14 says, "When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed those who were ill." And when Jesus is indignant at the leper, he's not indignant that the man has asked him. He's indignant that sin and illness can cause such horrors on a human being. So I think we'd have to note that Jesus' healings were not just signs and wonders to back up the kingdom, the message of the kingdom. Many appear just to be out of compassion. And if we, the church, are also to show compassion, we'll also bring prayers of healing. And healing is definitely holistic, isn't it? It's really sort of bad word, but holistic sums it up. Because body, mind and spirit may all need healing. And if physical healing doesn't occur, healing may be happening in the mind and in the spirit. And we all need to build a theology of illness and healing that faces reality that people often are not healed, at least physically, to encourage prayer because often people are healed. And it sees answers that may not be the physical healing, but the person may be transformed in some other way. And it does allow God sometimes just to allow sickness for reasons that we just don't know. And this is just me thinking. I know when I look at the microbiology and science around, there are definitely good and bad bacteria, and for that matter viruses, being rather topical. And I think it may be there are as many bacterial cells in our body as there are body cells. It's an incredible fact. But bacteria are sort of a very much part of our body. And sometimes the illnesses we get come from being too much of one particular bacteria. If you like, it goes over to the dark side and there's too much of it and does something it shouldn't. And I just wonder whether the fall didn't so much as create illness, as is sometimes our picture, but disturbs the balance of the natural world, and hence its groaning in Romans 8, that the natural balance in our bacteria and our bodies was disturbed by sin. And of course you have to note that without bacteria there would be no blue cheese. I mean, was there blue cheese in the Garden of Eden? It's a very difficult question. Another minor red herring, which has been a matter of great debate over the years theologically, is the Messianic secret. As in our passage today, Jesus appears to try and play down that he is the Messiah. Why does he do this? Is this something that's been made up by the gospel writers? But no, I don't think so. I think that Jesus obviously was always in control of his ministry and what was happening around him. He would say that he was Messiah when he was good and ready. On certain occasions he'd give broad hints, and finally when he rides into Jerusalem on a donkey, it's really explicit for that final confrontation. He certainly didn't need the support of demons telling him who he was. And then on a purely practical note, he didn't want too much opposition too easy. We see in this passage how he had to retreat out of the area because the healed leper had said too much. And perhaps sometimes he wanted people to ask questions, to think for themselves and find the Messiah themselves. And for us today, I think it's a simple message, but you can all disagree with me. We should always pray for physical healing, unless God tells us otherwise, and not the other way round. I know people who've said in the past, well, I never pray for people to be healed unless God tells me. I think it should be the other way round. I think we should try praying for healing unless God specifically tells us otherwise. But if we do that, we've got to not be discouraged, because we rarely see or understand the whole picture of what God is doing. So, I guess over to you.